I'm thrilled to have Valerie Armstrong, who is the creator, writer, and producer of Kevin Can Fuck Himself on Netflix. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for saying "fuck himself" instead of "f himself." It really makes me happy.
Yeah, I did that when I had your editor, Maura, on the show. I did beep it out, and then I saw you in an interview with somebody else, and I'm like, why don't I just say it? I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Um, Yeah, well, let's just start with, you started as a writer's assistant on Masters of Sex, to a showrunner's assistant, to staff writer on SEAL Team. How did that help you navigate the world of creating Kevin Can Fuck Himself, and
Oh
running your
god,
own show?
it taught me everything. I mean, it's rare that when you wanna be a writer in television or movies or just in this town, or maybe ever, that, like, your day job can correlate to what you wanna be doing eventually because, you always have to be writing on your own and producing on your own, just material, but to be getting coffee for the people who you want to be eventually is so informative and so helpful, and if they like you enough, can continue to promote you until they can actually make you a writer. So, for the first time, I came out to LA when I was 21 and did everything, anything I could. And the first job that really felt like, "Oh my god, maybe this is my foot in the door. Maybe this could actually lead, like, I can see the path," was becoming a writer's actually PA first for Masters of Sex. So I ran that office, I got lunch every day, I got groceries, I anything anybody wanted. I was like, "I'll do it. I got it." I just wanted to be the person that all of these writers relied on because I never got to meet TV writers before that job, and suddenly I was able to help them. And I didn't care if it was, going out on Valentine's Day to get some writer's wife, like, flowers, I was gonna do it. And so they did eventually promote me to writer's assistant, which I think is, like, the greatest day job in the business, if you wanna be a writer. It's no assistant work, you sit in the writer's room all day long, and you just take notes for very smart people. And if you are lucky enough to work for people like I did, they will let you pitch in the room. I was very careful about how much I pitched. You never ever want to be like a bummer voice that speaks up in a writer's room, and that's like top to bottom. That is staff writer, producer level, writer's assistant, it doesn't matter. Like, you want to have people want to associate your voice with success. So that's why I always give people advice if they're going into a writer's room for the first time, like, don't think that pitching an issue is going to work well for you.
Right.
Absolutely, there are issues. You should always excuse me, point out bumps and, things that maybe your boss hasn't quite seen yet. But if you do that, you have to have a fix. Like, think about it on your own time until you get to that fix, because otherwise you are just telling your boss, like, that thing you really like, that's not gonna work, and they don't wanna hear it. It's
Right.
really our job.
Yeah.
And they just, like, when I finally got to do that job, I just remember thinking, like, "I just want people who will help row the boat." Like, we're all in it together. It's so hard. Let's just figure out a way to get from A to B, and let's be helpful and kind and have fun, because certainly didn't get into this business to make money because I had absolutely no guarantee that I would. I wanted to do this because I wanted to have fun and I wanted to like going to work. And I really, really do. And so being a writer's assistant was like grad school. I mean, especially on Masters of Sex with like brilliant, brilliant people. It taught me everything: how to comport myself in a room, how to break story, and when to say you have an issue and when to not. And eventually, a producer from Masters of Sex brought me onto SEAL Team on CBS, and I was writer's assistant there. And then they promoted me to staff writer, which is, the giant promotion you're dying for from the time you move out to LA.
Oh my god, that must be so exciting to, one, be on these shows. and just winner shows. And then 2 is to be promoted up and also making a lot of connections. I mean, that's kind of
I
the
still
nature of the game.
talk to so many of the people who I've worked with and worked for. And, being a writer's assistant was invaluable in terms of learning to be a writer. Being a showrunner's assistant, which at the time I did that job I didn't really want to do because it was kind of a step back, but I needed a job and it was a tough time in the end. I was like, yeah, yeah, I'll do that. And it ended up being so important to see what my boss did every day, what to expect, how every single decision was hers on her show. I mean, down to wallpaper on a set, like, absolutely every decision was hers. And if you hire good enough people who love their jobs, they present you with stuff where you just say yes. You're not going through wallpaper books, and if you are, something's going wrong. So, yeah, I think that job, really I didn't wanna do it, and it was really hard. I somehow was able to write around those hours, but, I got to set before she did. I was there 13 hours a day, and it was, um it was hard, but it was really, really helpful when I finally did that job.
Yeah, you never know where something's gonna lead you and why. That's kind of the fascinating thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I saw how hard the job was on her too, like, how much it demanded of her. So I was ready. I knew it was coming.
Yeah. Now, when you're in a writer's room and you're the assistant, I mean, and they say, "Hey, Valerie, what do you think? Pitch an idea." Like, what does that look like for you? Is that you're always thinking of you have to always be thinking about ideas so that if they do, you're ready?
Um It's so rare that you are ever sort of called upon, which is lovely. The great thing about being a writer's assistant as opposed to starting in a room as a staff writer, I mean, the money is about a third, which is a bummer, but you are under no expectation to contribute. That is just not a part of your necessary job description. So you get to, if you don't say anything in a day, you're not doing something wrong. You have no pressure on you like that. But it is very clear what the problem of the room is at times, what problem is trying to be solved. And if you have a way out, if the room is going for like 2 hours trying to like figure out what this like plot point will be that'll get you to the next one, and you can solve it, you think you might be able to, that's when I would talk. I would have to have like a pounding in my chest, like kicking myself if I didn't do it to speak up. And I think that was the bar for me. I would suggest that for most writers' assistants because, everybody says, at least everybody I've worked for and everybody I've heard in writers' rooms always says, a good idea can come from anywhere. Anybody can talk. But it's true. But at the same time, if you are like desperate to move forward and like in a bad mood and it's been hours, you have a certain expectation when you hear someone's voice. Like, oh, if you have a very low batting average and you speak up in that moment, everyone just sort of cringes. Like it's probably the same in other meetings in life. I've just never been in those. And if the writer's assistant speaks up, there's like a tension that can happen because they're not proven. You didn't hire them to do that job. That is not what they're really like there for. And so there's just an inherent sort of like, your shoulders go up like, oh, is this going to be bad? Everyone's rooting for you. Everyone's rooting for it to be good. Trust me. But it's just, it makes everybody a little nervous. So that's why I say, like, don't talk all the time. Don't talk all the it's even if you're a staff writer, like, if you have one great idea a day, you are doing your job. Oh my god, are you doing your job? As long as you're not talking all day long with that one idea. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yes, very much so. Um, and then I also, I know that you had a general meeting with AMC, as you're getting getting ready to just pitch some ideas, right? Just pitch some ideas. And then you, put your pilot out there, and that changed everything. So, can you tell us about that experience? And yay
Yeah,
for
it's
you.
thank you. It's, what I call the most annoying story in Hollywood, because it never happens. It never happens. And I had so many people say to me, like, you know it won't happen like this the next time, right?" And I was like, "Uh-huh, I got it. Thank you. I got very lucky." Um, I went from SEAL team to a different writer's room, an AMC mini room back when they did those, for prospective series. I had an old boss from Masters of Sex who had a mini room, and she wanted me to come write on it. And, uh, AMC was like, "Okay, but also this woman has only worked on SEAL Team for CBS. You sure?" And my boss was like, "Yes, I really believe in her." And they said, "Okay, well, we should set up just a general meeting to meet her." And, when you get your first agent in LA, you do this kind of thing called the water bottle tour, where you go and meet executives all around town just to chat and have them know your face. So if they have anything, you know, whatever, they might remember you. Nothing really comes of these most of the time. And, but they always read your stuff ahead of the meeting. So I had a meeting with a woman named Erica Weinstein. And 2 hours before the meeting, my manager, brand new manager, called and said, so I guess everybody read your script before the meeting. And now the meeting is about buying it, and there are like 4 other executives. Do you have anything prepared for like a series?" And I said, "Absolutely not. No, this is a sample. It's not supposed to be a show. I mean, I'd love it to be a show, but no, I haven't dreamed that big." She's like, "Great, go have fun." And the meeting I thought went pretty terribly. Um, but I did, the best I could and was like, "Okay, thank you very much. I'll just kindly fuck off." And, yeah, like 4 weeks later, I got called that they wanted to buy the script. And from then on, at that point, it still had to go through maybe 4 rungs of, like, places it could possibly die, and it just didn't. And eventually we like, got the call that they wanted to make it, which was just wild, wild, and so much fun. Like, I always looked at my bosses wondering, like, how do they know? How do they know they have to make decisions all day long, say yes and no? How do they just seem to know what's right? And then I did it, and I was like, "Oh, because you do. Like, you care enough. You have it in your bones. That's your entire job, is that you are the voice of the show." And so when you're presented with 300 decisions a day, I felt so comfortable knowing which way I wanted things to go,
Yeah, I would think that if you write it, you pretty much have a visual world of it and kinda know, what you want and what you don't want. Um,
especially for this show.
yeah, definitely, and diving into that, like, why don't you tell us a little bit about, how you came up with this idea, this amazing idea to merge 2 I feel 2 genres, the sitcom, the multicam, and then the drama, the single cam world, in Kevin Can Fuck Himself, and then what did the show end up being about? Was it different from your conception to then the reality?
So I came up with the show. I had started writing every day after Masters of Sex was canceled. And I was like, "Oh, they're not gonna promote me. Nobody's gonna do this for me." I was unemployed suddenly, not only not a writer, but not even employed. And I thought, "Okay, no one's gonna do this for me. I really have to write every day." Like, no one's promoting me because I don't have a job. So that was like December. I'm about to hit my, I think, 8th anniversary of writing every day. That was December of 2016. And so I was just an hour every day in my journal or in a project. It can be either. If you write an hour every day with no internet and no distractions, you actually get a lot done. Like, a lot done. And so I had, like, maybe 2 scripts, and then but I think just writing every day gets your brain in that mode of thinking that way, which is so helpful. And I was listening to a podcast, where 2 comedians I really loved, I wanna say one was Casey Wilson, I don't even remember now, but they were 2 women talking about pilot season and how they go out every year for the sitcom life, and they're always told by their agents, like, "They want a really funny woman for this." And then they get the sides for the audition, and it's all reaction. It's all like, "What do you mean, honey?" And no jokes. And I was like, "How? How is that still going on? Why are these women reading for those roles I'd kill to write something for them?" And then for some reason, it just popped into my head, like, and I think Erin Hayes too had maybe just been killed off of Kevin Can Wait. I just imagined her, like, with a laundry basket in her hand, leaving, like, the multicam, typical living room, like, swinging door into the kitchen, and it looking like Breaking Bad, and figuring out that she's actually, like, completely miserable, which I would totally believe. And I thought, "Well, now that's interesting. Is that a scene? Can that be a whole sample pilot, let alone series?" 2 seasons. But, I was like, "Oh, I'm excited by this. I'm gonna drop whatever I was doing before and start writing that." And I had such a good time writing that show. I remember I wrote the teaser, that, initial single multicam scene into the single cam one, kind of as a proof of concept for myself, and I was like, "Oh, I could do this." And that original pilot, the one that AMC read, the one that went around to, companies and stuff, because we didn't really ever pitch it. AMC just bought it. That was a very different show. Allison was very, very different. She was a lot more like Patty. Like, my original conception of Allison was that she knew she was miserable, and in a very East Coast way, just had decided that was fine for her. And then she got pregnant in the pilot, and so she decides that she's going to, leave Kevin before he knows that she's pregnant, because she knows he will control everything once they have a kid, that he is she knows how manipulative and awful he is. And through, like, a silly multicam stuff, he's having a feud with the garbage man, and they get into, like, an off-camera, like, garbage throwing fight, and he comes in, and he's holding the pregnancy test because he found it when he was, like, going through the trash. In the pilot, Patty's in love with her, like, very different, and I love that version, but we went once you make it into a real show, things have to change, and we went through a lot of iterations of who Allison was. Me and my co-showrunner, we were so, like, frustrated of banging our head against the wall. I was like, "What if she's me?" Which she is not, but we did give her a lot of my, like, type A, kind of thinking that there's a perfect version of herself that's out there, that if she just does everything right, she can reach that she'll finally be happy, like, she'll finally be done, and I absolutely have that, and I'm not alone. I think plenty of women do. We're kind of taught that if we do the right thing, like, and by right, I don't even mean moral, I mean, like, have the right hair, have the right body, have the right husband, you are taught that you will then be fulfilled, and she gets all of those things and realizes that, uh, that's not at all what she wants. And so really, I mean, it's a show about living with a narcissist, and it's always been a show too about making that sitcom life a real person, and what we've seen that billboard 1,000 times. The challenge is, and everybody says, like, "Her with him," please. The challenge was making, like, "Yeah, her with him, here's why." And the why changed for her, but the point and, like, the getting stuck and the sort of secret lives of women behind the veneer that we put up in our multicam kind of lives for the rest of the world, like, that all stayed very true. Like, that's the point of the show, and it's about women saving each other, Patty and Allison. It was them from the very beginning, from that first pilot, and that definitely stayed.
Yeah, I watched you in an interview with Big Vic Media, and I loved what you said about the multicam world, is the patriarchy, where you get away with the cutting jokes and the inappropriate behavior, and the single cam world was the consequences of your actions and decisions. And I thought that was so well done in the show that you could see, and as, um Annie Murphy, who played Allison, was transforming, coming to her own reality, waking up, she was also waking up the people around her.
Yep, absolutely. The job of any pilot is how why now? What's different in this moment that then shoots the series off forward? And the idea that her decision to try to kill Kevin, even though, that's not the most well thought out idea, it's the first agency she's taken in forever. It's the first thing she's done for herself. It's a secret she has. Like, the killing him actually was not the point at all. It was just the vehicle. And we always talk about how that decision kind of splinters the rest of the reality slowly, but things that happen in the multicam would have never happened had she made that single camera decision. And you can see Kevin's world get kind of darker. The way we described it when we kind of pitched this series once we got far enough, he's looking around saying the world's going to hell. He doesn't know that she is actually causing all of this and actually trying to kill him. He sees it as, "Oh, wow, the world is now dangerous." He doesn't know his wife hired a hitman. He thinks he's the victim of a robbery. Once we discovered that, like, at first, all of the sort of rules we made for ourselves, the point of the show, the 2 elements, like, they all seem like they might hamstring you in the actual writing of the series. But the truth is once you figure out what you're doing, the sort of math problem, it was so fun to think of, "Oh, what does that mean? How could that look? Like, what are different ways that we can have the multicam and single cam interact with each other that we haven't done yet? Like, what's a fun, multicam trope that we can turn on its head?" Like the farce episode, which is one of my favorites, is like, "Oh, it's fun and games," then the multicam, and for her, she's just, like, trying to hang the fuck on. And, and then we did an episode in season 2 where every multicam scene is basically the start of a different multicam episode for Kevin, where he continually fucks someone over. Like, just thinking of stuff like that was so fun, and I miss it. It was a fun show to write. It was very hard. And, I'm working on other stuff now and it's like, one show's nice.
I know. I wanna say Eric Peterson playing Kevin was Kevin. I mean, I was like, "This guy is
There is
like."
no irony in that performance. Like,
Right.
he is going for it, for sure. I really appreciated that he never played it with a wink. He never played it with like, "I know I'm an asshole. I know, like, I'm in on what this is." He did. And we did that too. We wanted to make the best version because we love multicams. Like, me and the people who wrote the show, who made the show, like, during the pandemic, I just watched Frasier over and over and over. Like, which is why we did a French farce episode. I so appreciate a great multicam. And so did Eric. So did everybody. And I think it could have gone badly.
Right. But it didn't. I mean,
No,
I loved that the first season was kind of the setup to the transformation in the second season. I was getting so mad at Kevin, who was creating chaos for everyone. He was such a dick and just such a narcissist. Everything he didn't even want kids because it was all about him. Is every time anybody would steer away, he would always bring it back and then just create really gnarly scenarios. But I loved how you came up with the reversal of how Kevin, in his world of creating chaos, Allison actually used it against him. I thought that was so well done flipping the script.
well, the second season, once she stops trying to kill him and has faking her own death to leave, she she can be in the multicam in a different way. She didn't have to just be, like, put upon. She has something else going on, and what I found really interesting, we all did, and what has been so ridiculous and lovely to see on TikTok of all places, my manager sent me some videos and, like, people actually really got it in a way I never expected them to. mostly because nobody watches AMC, but now that it's on Netflix, people actually did. But when she realizes like, "Oh, Kevin can get shit done. Yeah, he's destructive, but he gets his way. What does it look and I know how to manipulate him. So what does it look like when I manipulate him to take down somebody I want taken down?" And she is able to take a more active role in the multicam in the 2nd season, and in our 6th episode actually, like, gets him to do something very destructive for her. And there's a moment where she's alone, like, Kevin leaves the scene, and she is still a multicam because she is now, like, kind of part of the problem. And you saw in a flashback that that's how she grew up. Her mom was a sort of multicam catalyst, and she, is now I thought part of the problem. I thought that was so interesting. We really worked on that for a long time about what that looked like. And yeah, and then by the end, when Kevin goes into single camera, that stuff he does in at the end, right before the house burns down, is all stuff he would have done in multicam and people would have laughed. Like burning stuff in the house, like thinking that's a good idea. That can totally be a multicam plot line, except now there are finally consequences for it.
Yeah. No, that was pretty intense, and it was also I loved how the characters would flow from multicam sometimes into drama. Not everybody in the multicam world became in there. And then also the single cam going into the multicam, which was interesting. I loved your play, and then to see them have to be more comedic, and their timing of things. So I thought you did such a great job of that, which made me start to think, in your writer's room, did you have writers solely writing for the multicam and then other people for the single cam, or did everybody write both?
Everybody wrote both. Everybody, got, an episode that had both in it, and, but we definitely hired a few comedy people, a few drama people. I come from drama, but I really love sitcoms, so I felt like I knew the language of it, and I do think it's probably an easier transition from comedy to drama because being funny is really hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And so everybody gave it their best shot, but there were absolutely times where, like, I was rewriting episode 4 and the multicam was just I didn't have a good handle on it, and 2 of the writers were like, "We got it." There are 2 comedy writers, Craig and Sean, and just, like, killed it. Like, they made it they simplified it, they made it so much better. They, you know, really took the load off. And then I would know, how to write Patty and Allison. Maybe, it's always a group project, which I love, and also, have a hard time with sometimes because, like, yeah, I wanna be good at everything, I wanna do everything, but there's honestly not enough hours in the day either.
Right, yeah. How many writers did you have in the writer's room with you?
I would say the average was usually probably, like, 6
6?
with
And then
including me and Craig, yeah.
yeah, and then how does it work for people that don't know what goes on in
Sure.
a writer's room?
So everybody sits around, you have an 8-hour meeting every day. And it can be very stupid and fun. I refuse to do any I hope any Zoom rooms. I love an in-person room so much because you can bullshit and eat lunch together and watch stupid videos. But, it really is, like, one of my favorite things to do. But you start out the first couple weeks talking about kind of big blue sky, what does the season look like? What's the show about? That kind of stuff. And then you start really breaking episodes individually. So, you might have a few tent poles up on the board, on the big writers room board of what will happen by the middle of the season, by the end of the season. So you know what you're working towards, but you really dig in on the first episode together as a room. You figure out every scene that will happen. At least this is how most rooms I've been in work. Um, you talk about it a lot, you know the location, you have the cards on the board, you should know by the time a writer goes off and writes an outline, they should know they shouldn't be having to do a ton of, like, independent study on the point of a scene, definitely not of the episode. So once we all get a very good idea of what an episode is, one of the writers is assigned that episode, will go off and write an outline. Meanwhile, the rest of us continue on to episode 2. Do the same thing, and then, the way it works is by the time you get the outline back, you are like, somebody else is off, and yeah. So, the writer will go and do a script after the outline, hand us the script, and we always gave 1 round of notes and, gave them a chance to address them. But, it's a weird show, and, especially that 1st season, it was a very tough assignment to write an episode of the show. It had never been made. Nobody, like, and it's the voice was different. And so but it is always the job of the person in my position to make it all sound cohesive. So I would then rewrite it, either 10%, 100%, whatever, to make sure that it fit into the rest of the show. Voice wise, narratively, like, it's also not a writer's job to necessarily deal with what's happening at the network on the network level or with the actors or, with production issues. Like, that's kind of my job anyways. So, yeah, after a certain point, the writer sort of lets it go, and then it's, up to the gods.
Oh, okay. And then, I was just kinda curious, okay, you have a love story going on between Detective Tammy and Patty. What were your thoughts around that? Like, why bring those 2 together?
Well, I always knew that Patty was queer and older, and I had come out at like 28, and I had this feeling when I did of like, ugh, I'm so old. Did I miss it? Like, this is embarrassing. I felt embarrassed to be telling people that I figured something out about myself so late in the game. And I felt like, "Oh, I haven't seen that story that much." Like, the feeling, it's great that kids are coming out at, like, 10, 12, 15, whatever. There were 2 gay kids in my high school, like, and, of course, they dated because who else were they gonna date? Like, there just wasn't anybody. It was just different. And so, yes, it's wonderful that kids and younger people feel more comfortable, but it had an interesting effect on me and as an older person of like, God, I'm such a loser. Like, I should have I didn't do this 20 years ago. It's embarrassing. So I wanted to tell that story, and it led up to, and also, her dating a cop was funny to us, and it had conflict, and, having a very straight talking, like, "This is what we're doing," would totally appeal to somebody like Patty who's fumfering around in her sexuality and isn't quite sure. Like, you know, she needs someone in that first relationship to tell her kind of what the deal is, what they're gonna do, take charge, so that she doesn't have to question too much.
Well, and it
Um,
it was also interesting because her boyfriend before, um, wanted to merge forward, but she did not, and then in this new relationship, Detective Tammy's pushing it forward, but Patty's kind of more as much as resistant, she's more open to going there, so I thought that was kinda interesting too, the to see the
absolutely.
dualism.
I think, her relationship with Kurt, who is actually, writer on the show, Sean Clements, whom I just adore, uh, that was an easy way for her to not have to think about what was going on. They had a routine, he came over, they watched Ray Donovan together, and if he wanted to have sex, she might deal with it, but she would probably say, like, "Mm, can we not tonight?" And he'd be fine with it. So when he says, like, "Let's get married," she's like, "Why would you mess with this thing that is working? Like, no, you're not getting it." And with Tammy, it's totally scary, but in a different way, in a way that's, has potential. And really, the scene that meant so much to me that I was so happy with is when, um, Tammy says to Patty, like, "I'm not gonna I'm not interested if you're not interested. Like, you know where I stand. I don't wanna be a secret." Um, and Patty says basically what I just did, which is, I don't wanna have to tell people. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that I waited this long. And I was really, really happy with it. And I was happy too that they broke up at the end because while Tammy was a great first girlfriend, Patty doesn't actually need somebody who's telling her what to do all the time. She needed it at first, but that's not long term.
Yeah. Well, and I was also glad that she didn't marry the dude. Like, she didn't because that would have been more like, "Okay, I gotta do this." Like, you know? But I like that she was very independent, took care of herself, took care of her brother, kinda took care of people, and, I like yeah, and I'm kinda glad that happened too, because I didn't feel Tammy was the right match for Patty. I like
No.
Patty.
Oh, I mean, I adore Patty. Uh, I adore all of them, even Kevin. I miss writing them. But yeah, I think Patty for the second season really became a story less about being closeted and figuring that out, and much more a story about codependence and how the people around her could kind of abuse her need to help and need to obviously her brother is sort of sucking the life out of her and using weaponized incompetence and not taking responsibility for his own life, and she's let that happen for a long time. And Allison really did that. Allison really did, like, tended toward that, like, abuse in the first season, and in the second season, Patty's like, "I'm not doing that anymore. I'm here to get you out of my life." And that Allison really uses that to kind of take stock and think like, "Oh, I need to be better to my friend." In season 2, she is actively trying to be better to Patty. Throw her a birthday party, think about what she wants, and that was not originally in the second season and something that really came out, I think, from Annie and Mary Hollis, and I'm really grateful to them for it.
I love their relationship.
Yeah,
I was so sad when Allison moved away because I was like and I knew that Patty was longing to hear from her again, um, and I love that she came back.
oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
why do
'cause
I need to leave?
exactly, exactly. Her problem was never Worcester. Her problem was that she couldn't stand in front of her husband and say, "I'm leaving." And for good reason, because he says what we always knew he's capable of, which is, "I will fucking destroy you." Like, she wasn't crazy for not wanting to confront him. She really knew what was gonna happen, but she finally was brave enough to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was kinda that the last episode was intense, and you directed that, so what made
I
you wanna
did.
step into directing?
I didn't think that was something I would want to do, but in making the first season, I actually it first came from our lovely script supervisor, Sheila, who said, I think you should really consider directing." She sits next to me and the director all day long and heard my notes and my thoughts to our just lovely director, Anna DeCosa, who basically came for 2 episodes and then I never let her leave. She did, like, 12 of our 16, I think. And Sheila said, like, "You know what you want. You know what it should look like. You are doing the job already." I don't know what made me think that I didn't want to do it. Maybe it's imposter syndrome, or I don't know that I could ever do that job for somebody else's show. I felt that I knew what I wanted at such a deep level because it was mine and because it came from me, that I felt, again, very confident in saying, "This is what this scene is about. This is what we should be trying to communicate through every aspect here." And it was, I mean, to do the series finale was just like a dream come true. I got to burn down a house.
Yeah. Yeah, now, was it filmed in Massachusetts or,
Yeah.
the whole
Whole
2
thing.
seasons was there?
Yeah, we didn't film in Worcester, we filmed outside of Boston, on converted stages in Randolph, Massachusetts, and then our exteriors were in Brockton. Um, and yeah, it was, very cold and, lived there for the first 2 years of the pandemic pretty much. So it was a very, very weird experience. We wore masks the entire time, other than the last day when I was like, "Fuck it, I'm done. I'm spending 1 day on set without a mask." Um, but yeah, it was a crazy experience, and they actually built me. I told them day 1 of season 2 that I wanted to burn down the house. I was like, "So let's start working on it." And so they built me a facade of the house in a gravel pit, and we actually burned it down. It's crazy. So
Oh.
much fun.
Oh my god, that was pretty intense, that whole thing where I knew what was gonna happen and
It
stuff.
came
Yeah.
out exactly how I wanted it to. Like, I think that's too why I wanted to direct. I knew what I wanted it to be. I knew what I wanted to feel like and look like, and I'd been wanting to put that, the song that plays over everything burning down, "This Guy's in Love with You," that song. Like, I knew I wanted to put that in something for years, and it just was perfect. Like, I am very proud of the whole thing, every episode.
Yes, it was a genre bender, that's for sure, and I loved it, I just haven't seen anything like it. I thought it was so innovative, and just kudos to you, and look at how quickly I mean, you must be proud of yourself. I mean, look at you. Look at what you accomplished that a lot of people say that just doesn't happen to people.
I mean, yeah, I say this all the time, like, I just wanna keep making a living writing. It's all I ever wanted. I mean, on my life list when I was 19, I think the biggest goal I had for myself in this industry was to become a writer's assistant. That was as big as I'd let
Oh,
myself dream. And so the idea that I get to write even for other people for the rest of my life, like, it's all I wanna do, and I got to do something that I didn't even dream for myself, like, I did it. I d and I actually feel like, "Okay, great." Not like I have to do it again or I have to do it bigger or, it has to go 5 like, I'm like, "Great, no, I did the thing I always wanted to do." And if I get to do it again, wonderful. But I'm never going to look this gift horse in the mouth ever.
right, yeah. Well, on that, selling a script, or on being a showrunner, showrunners really has to oversee everything, right? So what did you learn from selling your script, and what would you do differently next time? Anything that you learned?
I learned so much. I learned, um, I don't regret anything because I don't think there is any other way I could have learned what I did. I think that I did the very best that I could the first time around. I think the crew, at least from what I've been told, really loved working on the show and they felt respected and that it was a fun experience. But we also worked 10-hour days instead of 13, and that made all the difference in the world. It was a joyous place to be, I think, for most of it. I mean, there are bad days on anything, but I next time I would definitely try to have a better balance in my life. Granted, it was the pandemic, I was on location, I was, living in an apartment building in Quincy, Massachusetts, like, but I put every ounce of myself in the show, and that's just not necessary. Like, again, I don't regret it. I didn't know if I would ever be able to do it again, so it was like, I'm not going to look back and think I wish I'd done more, but it was my whole life. It was my whole life for 3 years. I forgot there was anything outside of it. And that is not great for the old brain. Like, it's just there's so I did one I've been on one staff since where I, like, wasn't the boss, and it was just great. It was just great to lend my brain and do a good job and try to help somebody else fulfill their vision, but to just not have to both drive the train and build the track at the same time. It's a lot. And it doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be my whole life. And the other thing I really learned that I hope my body remembers the next time, because it's a very hard lesson for some hard codependent people pleaser like I am. It's that everybody is allowed to not like their boss. Like I was so wanting to let the crew know that I loved them and was grateful, and I had gotten coffee for people like 4 years earlier. Like I know what that's like. I'm not so far removed that I don't remember how to function in life, like some of my, like, bosses when I first started in this business. Like, I am a functional human. I remember what it's like to be the lowest on the totem pole, and I never wanted anybody to feel like they were below me. But I definitely had moments where it was like, when we start at, like, 7 in the morning and my assistant comes in and gives me coffee, everyone's allowed to be like, "Ugh, must be nice." Like, yeah, it is nice, and also, I was up until midnight writing, like, nobody else was necessarily. I also, like, didn't come in for pre-call. Like, it's just people are allowed to be like, "Ugh, the producers." That's everybody's right. I had such a hard time with the idea that anybody felt that way about me. So I hope next time I'm not on set for every take. I absolutely was for Kevin. At least I almost every take. That's just not necessary. If you have a well-run machine, like you should be able to take a minute, go to post. I mean, when you're a showrunner, I remember thinking, "Oh my god, I am legitimately, this is not an exaggeration, legitimately supposed to be in 4 places right now. I should be writing, I should be in post, I should be on set, and I should be breaking an episode." Like, that's really, really, really hard, and there is no way to do it. You can't be in 4 places at once. So maybe instead of running around, like, delegate. Just take on a little bit less and be okay with being disliked, because that is the, curse and blessing of being the boss is, if everybody likes you, you're probably doing something wrong.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah.
It's so hard, it's so
Yeah.
hard. I thought if and especially things were very, very sensitive around that time. They still are. The words like toxic are really thrown around, and I really felt like if anybody had a problem with me, I was toxic, I was doing something wrong. I but it's my job. A lot of my job conflicts with other people's, and conflicts with, it's not a democracy, a set and a show. Like, I wasn't paid to take a vote as to where everybody thought the show should go. I was paid to take in a ton of input and decide. And that's really hard. Really, really hard because, if you have an executive telling you to go one way and an actor telling you to go the complete opposite, someone's going to be pissed. And by the way, it's very possible neither are right. So it's just, I hope I take things less personally, just make it less of my life.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. There has to be the balance, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A
totally.
and to be present in what you're doing and not have to feel like you're stressed all the time. It feels stressful.
Yeah, yeah, it's the greatest job. I'm not gonna pretend that it was like what do I say? It's difficult, not hard. I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. and rigging lights. I am not, like, lifting things or, like, shoveling the parking lot, for the trailers. Like, it's not a hard, taxing, that kind of way job. It was very difficult.
Are you in did you live in Massachusetts? I mean, are you from why
I'm from
Massachusetts, I guess?
I'm from Connecticut. I used to say trashy Connecticut, which is not true. It's a lovely little town. It's just not, like, fancy what you think of when you think of that state. I felt very, very New England, very akin to Massachusetts. And when I was thinking about way back, like the original pilot, I was like, where do I set this? And I did it through the lens of like sitcoms. And I was like, New York is so overdone. California, like boring. Chicago has seen a lot. And I thought Boston, it's close. Like I don't know that I've seen a ton of sitcoms take place there, but it feels too um like common. It needs to be more specific. And then I remember my brother's college roommate was from Worcester, and his stories were always ridiculous, ridiculous. And his accent was fabulous. The words career and the country Korea, couldn't tell the difference. And I thought, oh, that's a fun thing to think of when writing is that accent. And yeah, it never changed.
I love it, I love it. I just came from there. I went back east and I was in Connecticut too, Mystic, Connecticut.
Oh, Mystic
Yeah.
is beautiful.
Oh, such a cute town, yes. Love the area, love the area. So, yeah,
So great.
so it was kinda cool, like, "Oh, yeah, Boston, yay," or,
I mean,
outside of
truly, you go like, it was so great that we got to shoot there because the minute you thought you were being too cartoony, you would go to, like, a Dunkin' and hear people talk, and you were like, "Oh, no, we got it right. This is right."
Yeah, Duncan is everywhere. Was like, "D is Duncan from Boston?" I mean, I
Yes,
see it
Quincy,
everywhere. Yeah, okay.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what projects are you working on now?
I was actually a consulting producer on Cruel Intentions, which came out, like, yesterday, but somehow that was 2 years ago, so it's been a long time. And then I have a couple of things in development that if nothing else, made it so that I could work and write from anywhere this past year, which has just been lovely. Like, oh, I'm finally at that place of being a writer where I can do that thing where you write anywhere, and I was back east for a while. I've been cross country a few times. I went to Paris last year because my friend and I wrote something that takes place in Paris simply so that we could go. And now it's actually maybe something, I don't know. So that's great. But yeah, I think one show next time would be lovely. Um, I my taste went a little dark after Kevin, and I think I really leaned into like body droppy kind of mysteries. I love a small town. I love a sense of place. And then my friend Craig, actually, the co-showrunner of Kevin, came to me with this idea a couple months ago that's very like light and fun, like high schooly kind of rom-com, which I love. I love a teen movie. Um, I consume them constantly, and I we wrote it together, and it was such like a breath of fresh air to write something that was just simple and fun and like cute and funny. And I again, no idea if anything will come of it, but I write every day, right? So gotta be doing something.
No, I think that's great. So, the advice and tips to fellow writers, um, do you wanna say something about writing every
Sure.
day or anything?
Well, I used to think because I attribute almost everything great in my career happening since I decided to write every day, that used to be my advice. Um, but I've realized that people just their brains are different. The way mine works is if I'm going to tell myself I am a writer, which at this point I really should just accept, um, I I don't do the thing well of like, I think I'm gonna write today and be productive and finish something. Like, I need to have a schedule. I need to check it off my list for the day. Like, I heard once being a writer is like feeling like a student on Sunday night every day, like where you haven't done your homework. But doing my hour a day checks off the homework thing in my brain. So I never feel guilt. I used to feel guilty all the time for not writing enough. It is gone from my life. That is a wonderful thing. So if you have that guilt in that brain like I do, I suggest writer's method. You do, a certain amount of time every day, set a timer. Feel free to pause if you have to go pee or whatever, but like no internet, music without words, like that system has been wonderful for me. But not everybody has my brain. So I would say just figure out what makes you productive. If that's writing from 3 to 5 a.m. every day in the middle of the night, whatever. If that's like 2 weeks on where you go to a hotel and you just cram and do a ton and then take like 3 weeks off. As long as you are producing material that you can show other people and doing it on a regular basis so that you are getting better. That is something I can't stress enough is that it is a muscle. It is just like anything else. If you do it more, you will get better. So don't write the one thing and then just have that forever. You got to move on. You got to move on to the second thing because the first thing is almost always the same for everybody. It's very autobiographical. It's usually you can tell that the writer is writing about themselves. Get that one done, put it in a drawer, move on to the next thing, and keep getting better. And you never know when someone's gonna wanna read it, you know?
Right. Do you write, like, at the same time every day, in the morning? When's your bedtime to
I
write?
I tend to write in the morning to get the box checked and to stop thinking about it. It was very difficult during Kevin to get it done. It was a very busy time, and I also was very stressed, so I'd also try to run in the morning, and get up at, like, 4:30 to try to do
Wow.
both, which was intense. Again, better balance next time. Um, but, yeah, I find the morning very helpful. I also came to realize during the writing of Kevin, like, "Oh, I can get 15 minutes done before set. I can get 45 minutes done during lunch. Like, if I have to pause and pick up late, it's okay." Um, but yeah, I'm a big morning writer. I love to run, then write, and then play with my dog.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh my god, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram at Tammy Magaro. Until we meet again, what's your story?